thought I'd make a video about the process of getting a model into RealFlight. It's not really a tutorial on how to actually make a model or any kind of in-depth modeling in any way, shape, or form. It's simply what the process is that's required to get it into RealFlight. So all these shapes are going to be super basic and should be fairly quick. So if you downloaded your student version of 3ds Max, you will probably be pretty confused by this entire layout. But basically you just got 4 screens that are going to show the same thing, just a different version of the same thing, so a different view. You could pretty much ignore a lot of the stuff that's across the top until they're actually needed. A lot of this stuff has nothing to do with what we're going to do now. So what is important is this right hand menu over here. If you are on the first tab, which is this little sunburst, the Create tab, and on the first icon within that tab, you'll be in the Geometry tab. Any type of geometry that is listed here can be selected, and you'll be in what's called the creation phase for that piece of geometry. So if I select box, I go to the top view, and I notice that if you notice here there's a legend that's showing you the world axes. If this little intersection of these black lines here is the 0 in the X, 0 in the Y, and 0 in the Z, we need to point our airplane down the y-axis with the nose pointing at the advancing side of the y-axis. So we're going to consider the nose here at the top and the tail at the bottom. So all you got to do is drag out a box. You're going to first get the 2D footprint of your box. You're going to release that and then lift, and you'll get the third dimension, which would be our z-axis. So I'm just going to get a rough shape, and you can see over here there's a parameters box. As long as you haven't clicked outside of this box, it's still selected. You can use these boxes here to change things like its length, its width, and its height. You can put segments in it, which I'm only going to show if I show edged faces. I believe that's F3 on the keyboard. So you can get your segments in here. That's for later modeling. We won't really be too concerned about that right now. So, but better than to use these parameters here is to go to this next tab here, which is the Modify tab. This is where we're going to turn this box into something that's editable. So right now this box is only editable in the way that we can adjust its 3 dimensions. So from the top view, we're going to want it skinny. Most models are going to be fairly skinny. So that'd be our width. We're going to make the model fairly skinny, and the length should be whatever, and bring your height down a little bit. Okay, so that's basically the fuselage. From here we can't edit anything else, so we need to change this into something that is editable. If you right click here, you'll get editable poly. And you can either open up this editable poly here, and you can select the different sub-object types, which would be vertex, which is the corners. You can select edge, and that would be any of the edges that connect 2 vertices or 2 verts. Border, we'll cover later. Polygon would be any single face. If this is divided up into multiple sections, we'd have multiple faces, and selecting would just select one of those. Since there's no divisions here, select a polygon, select that face, it'll select the entire thing for you. And then element is something that we can cover at another time too. Okay, so basically what we want to do is taper the rear, which would be here, the back of the model. And you can see that's selected here in this view. The back of this is being selected. Then now we can finally direct ourselves up here to the top. these three icons are the most important thing that you use in this top toolbar. First one is to just move the box around or to move the sub-object around, which in this case would be the face. Plus or minus on your keyboard will move this. Will get your gizmo to grow or shrink. We can rotate or we can scale using that. Scale is what we're looking for. So go into any view. You can scale in one direction by using any one of these handles. If I scale in the X, we'll see we get it skinny this way. If I scale in the Y, nothing's going to happen because it's already flat in that direction. Or I can select another window here that will give me a different handle that will allow me to scale in that direction. But you may notice too that these handles are linked by these things that keep highlighting. So I can't really scale in the Y, so I wouldn't need either of these two handles. But this handle here would be pretty handy. Scale in two directions at once. So now you can see we got a taper going. So let's just call that. Tell you what, we'll go one step further. Select this front face and we'll pull a nose out of it. So we'll select that face, and you'll find under the Edit Polygons sub-menu here, you'll see Extrude. You're going to want to use the box next to Extrude, and you'll see that you've got a new section that pops out. You can use this to slide out as much as you need, or you can extrude inward, but what we want is to extrude a nose out. Okay, select, and let's just scale that this direction here. It makes some kind of a nose. We use the move tool to just move that face down. That's about as basic as you can get. That's probably as far as we're going to go to with the fuselage. Alright, so now we got a fuselage. Let's go up here to this box at the top, and in caps we will write fuselage. Alright, now that's a named part. So now we need to make the next part. Now I'm not going to do any kind of real detail for the wing, but we do need to have a left and a right wing. So we're not going to make the entire wingspan, we'll make one and then we'll make a copy of that. So we're going to go back to the Create tab, into the Geometry icon, and go to another box. Just kind of rough here, we'll grab right here on the center line and pull out about as far as what we think a wing, how far a wing should come out from an airplane. And once you release, you'll see in the other views that you're getting more, you're going to get the height. So we release that, use the move tool, and in this view, you can move that up so it sets right on top, just like so. Oh, probably shouldn't have did that. Let's go back to back view. Okay, this is the back view. Okay, so we're going to call that a wing. That's all we're going to do for that. So let's go up here to the Edit tab. I guess that's the Modify tab. I'm going to select that wing. And other parts other than the fuselage in RealFlight need to be named with a tilde CS underscore prefix. And a lot of parts will have required names. Since this is on the left side of the plane, it would be the left, L for left, M for main, and W for wing. This would be the LMW. Okay, so now we just need to make a copy of this part, and we'll put it over here to the other side. Now with this selected, we can come up here to the mirror tool, and we can make a copy, and now that's mirrored, and we can pull the mirrored part over Well, there's better ways to do this, obviously, more advanced ways to do this once you get used to the program, but like I said, this isn't about being exact or pretty in any way. You can see that a copy is going to be named the same as the copy, or as the part it was made from, with 001 concatenated to the end. So we need to get rid of that, and we need to now get rid of the L, and now we need it to be RMW, right main wing. Okay. So now a handy little thing we can do is we're going to need an aileron. So instead of making a new box, what we'll do is hold the shift on the keyboard, grab the Y handle, and just push back, and we got a gigantic aileron. Okay, and this gives us a chance to name it right here. We've made a copy. I'm going to take off these letters here, and we're going to call this, I believe I've misnamed things. This is the left. Okay, I'm caught up now. Alright, so I'm going to make this L, M, A for left main aileron. Click OK. We need to rename this to L, because I guess I don't know my left from my right. This one, R. Okay, now we can see that's entirely too long. So let's change this to an editable poly. We'll grab this back edge here, and let's shrink that up to make it more appropriate to be an aileron. And while we're here, why not take it just in the Z-axis, just by grabbing this handle, pull it down so it's got some sort of taper. And now that that's done, let's grab this poly, go back to the move tool, move that outside the fuselage so that it can actually pivot. Okay, so we got a very basic aileron. So now here's a little trick. We'll mirror this across to the other side, but this time we'll mirror it so it's perfectly in the right place. So we've worked with these two tabs in the past. We're going to work with the third tab now. And all the way down here, you see it says use working pivot. So we're going to click that. You see that the pivot, the move tool changes to the center location. That's set to the 0, 0, 0 of the world. So now when we mirror, you'll see that that pops across and shows up perfectly in place. We need to take a chance here to rename this to right main aileron, or RMA. Okay, so that's a nice big fat wing. Let's grab all these parts here. We're going to hold Control on the keyboard and click all of the wing parts, including the aileron. And let's position them a little more realistically. Okay, and I'm going to grab the scale tool, and if you hold the very center here, you're going to get the wing to scale in all its axes at once. So we'll shrink the whole wing down, and shrink all these parts together, and then switching back to the move tool, we can reposition again and get a more appropriate size wing. Let's lift this up a little bit more, get it right flush. That's good. Turn that working pivot off that we used for the mirror copy. Alright, so now we've got everything selected. Why don't we just turn all of this stuff into the horizontal staff. So we'll hold shift, grab the Y, we'll drag this back. We're just going to select OK. We have too many parts to use that box to rename. So now we're going to move this down. Okay. Moving back to the scale tool, we're going to grab the middle and scale it down to more appropriate tail size. It's somewhat like that, but I like the tail to be a little wider. So here's another little trick. We're going to grab just the two wing parts that are misnamed right now, and we'll go to the Modify tab. Now when you select multiple objects, it gets rid of all your tools and you can edit multiple objects together. If you select just one, you'll see everything comes back. But we're going to select two, and we're going to use this little drop down, and we're going to go down until it says Edit Poly. Now all our tools have popped back, and it allows us to modify both of these at the same time. So going to the polygon selection type, I'm going to select both of these front polys and drag this forward. Let's get a better view. Drag that forward. Okay. That's good. I like it. Now while I still have both of these selected, which I just unselected, I'm going to right click on this Edit Poly. I'm going to say Collapse All. And what that's going to do is take away the shared Edit Poly, and it's going to bring it back to so that each one is individually an editable poly. So now, looks like these parts, let's reposition, we'll select all parts again. Make sure we're on the fuselage. Good. Okay, so now these need to be named correctly. So, you don't want this to be the right main wing anymore. We need this to be the RMHS, or the right main horizontal stabilizer. And accordingly, the LMHS, or the left main horizontal stabilizer. And we can call this the left main elevator. This is what is actually being asked for by KE. That's what they want them to be named. So this will be RME for right main elevator and left main elevator. Okay, so far we got our parts named. We got almost everything here. So now it'd be nice to have a rudder. Now again, I can make another part, but I'm just going to take one side here, and I'm going to rotate this part. So now I'm in the rotate tool. You'll see if I can grab any side of this globe here that comes out, this globe-shaped gizmo, and I'll be able to rotate it. You'll also see that I'm rotating it freely, and the degrees are in the decimals. That's not going to be good. I want 90 degrees out of this. So if I now grab the green handle here and I rotate it, you can see my degrees are by 5 degrees by default. But I don't want to steal this part and make it the rudder, so I'm going to hold the Shift button on the keyboard, Shift key, and when I do that, I'll end up rotating a new part out. Stop at 90 and release the mouse, and I can't really name it right now because I have multiple parts. So I'm going to click OK, grab this Move tool, I'm going to lift this up so that it intersects. I want this to intersect with this guy here. Move that over. I'm just going to eyeball it for now. I'm not really too concerned about how perfect everything is. So now that's a really tall elevator. I don't like the shape of it either. So what I'm going to do is I got these two selected, and just like we did before, I'm going to hit this drop down, Edit Poly. Alright, I'm going to grab some polys. I'm going to grab both of these two top polys. I'm just going to move them down to more appropriate height. That looks a little better. Most of the vertical stabilizers I've ever seen are sloped in the front. So I'm going to grab the Edge tool. I'm going to grab just this front corner edge here, and then in the side view, using the Y handle, I'm going to move that back and put a slant on it. Alright, this rudder's pretty puny, so I'm going to go in here and grab this face. I'm going to pull it out into a more appropriate rudder size. It's nice. Now let's grab this one here and pull that one straight down on the side. So now let's unselect the sub-objects here so that we can move these again, and I want to move this out so my hinge line is at the back edge. Back edge of the fuselage. My voice is cracking. A little too much exercise, I guess, today. So anyways, slide this back. I want these to roughly line up as well. Just being picky, I guess. Alright, now that I'm looking at it, there's a couple things I don't like about the whole elevator system here. So I'm going to drop another editable poly on this. And I'm going to grab the back edge of my elevators. That's not the back edge. Drag those back. Very nice, very nice. I'm going to go to the edge tool. I'm going to select this edge here, and the corresponding edge on this one. From the top view, just drag them back. That looks a lot more like a tailplane. Okay, so now what did we do? We didn't name the top parts. So let's unselect this, and we're going to collapse all. I believe the same thing happened here. We never collapsed, so again I'm going to collapse these. Okay, so this is not my LMHS. This is going to be my let's see, MVS, I believe. Maybe MVS or MMVS, I'm not really sure. And that's main vertical stabilizer. Okay, and the rudder is going to be MVR. Remember, we're using capitals. It has to be tilde CS underscore for the prefix. It's very important that it stays that way. Okay, so we got things named up so far now. Now we want to make a landing gear here, so we'll make a Duro gear for it, for the main gear. So this time we're going to create some new geometry. So let's come up here in the top view. And so far we've been in wireframe. The way to change that is to just click where it says wireframe here in the corner. Go to smooth and highlights. And then keep acting like this is my perspective view. And then click that again and go to edged faces. And when a part's selected, you'll be able to see its edges. Also, up to this point, we've had this pesky selection box here. I think wraps around. It's called a bounding box. It takes up the entire volume of your object. If you want to get rid of that, if it's distracting, hit the J key on the keyboard. And the bottom part here is the grid. It's pretty much to stay landmark to let you know where you're at in the world. So I know where I'm at right now. I'm going to just go ahead and hit G, and I'm going to get rid of that. Alright, another cool thing we can do here is, just like Windows, we can maximize any one of these windows at any time by this very bottom icon in the very corner, and that will make the viewport big. So now we got a good view of what's going on. And a good way to get from view to view is to hit the V key on the keyboard. And if I want to go to a top view, I've got a top view. V key again, back view, V key again, left, V, right, just goes on and on. Another thing you may want to know here is this is what you'd call a orthographic view. As I move this from side to side, I'm not seeing any more of the front of the airplane. I'm not seeing any more of the back of the airplane. Can't see any more of the top or the bottom because no perspective is being introduced here. It's what's called orthographic. If I want perspective, I hit the P on the keyboard. Now you can see as I go this way, I can see more of the front. And I go that way, I can see more of the back, more of the top. So that's the difference between orthographic and perspective. If I want to get back to orthographic, it's the U key. And I'm back orthographic. Orthographic is very good for keeping things lined up and going smooth. Remember, you can just always get back to those whenever you want to. So I like the perspective key, and if you hold Control and Alt on the keyboard and the middle mouse button, you will change your field of view or your perspective. That's a little trick. Or you can let's see here. What else can you do? What's going on? I'm screwing something up. Yeah, I'm screwing things up. Okay. Alright, so now if I hit Alt on the keyboard and middle mouse wheel, I hold both of those at the same time if you have a push down mouse wheel. And then just move the mouse around and you'll be able to rotate around, and you'll see you're rotating around this part. Now this works really good in perspective view. In orthographic, you can see it looks like it's in perspective, but if I move it, I don't see any more or any less. So that's an orthographic view. If I try the same trick, and I try rotating around, which it's not wanting to do for me. Let me go back here. Something is going on. Ah, okay, alright. So if I'm an orthographic view, oh, what do you know? It's working today. It's going to work this time. See, it's just the oddest thing. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You can see, though, it's rotating around the selected part. You select a new part, middle mouse wheel, and Alt, and move the mouse, and you're going to rotate around that part. You can see as you switch, usually when you switch in between, maybe that's when everything's deselected. Anyway, I think I'm getting sidetracked. We're making Duro gear for this guy. So we're going to hit the V, we're going to go to a top view. Now we're in the top view, I'm going to go back to the Create tab. Under Geometry, I'm going to click on Box. I'm going to make the just the plate that connects to the bottom of the fuselage, so just about yay big. And a little bit of thickness. Go to Perspective View. Use our little rotate. We can see how thick we've made it. That'll work for now. I'm going to hit the Move tool, and you'll see now down here these boxes, they're showing positional information. So I've got a position on the X of 59. I want to center that. Great easy way to center that box up is to right click on these arrows right here. I right click, it centers that box up on the X. Now I'm fairly centered on the fuselage because I've really never centered the fuselage or anything yet. So I want to bring this just in front of where the CG would be, and if you know anything about airplanes, we're looking at about a quarter to 33% back from the leading edge of the wing. So I want to be ahead of that, so I'm going to be kind of even with the leading edge, I think. Alright, this width is pretty good. That was pretty good guess, I guess. Alright, let's center that fuse up while we're at it. That'll make things look a little nicer with the bottom part. Okay, so the fuselage is centered up. Alright, so we're going to go back to our part. I'm going to go to the Modify tab, and we need to change this into an editable poly, something we can edit. I want to extrude out the legs for the landing gear. So I'm going to select both of these polys, and I'm going to hit the extrude box here like we've done before, and I'm going to extrude that out a tad until it's about a good length, and hit the check mark, accepts that. Now these are going to normally taper, so that's what I want to do. I'm going to grab the scale tool, just the Y handle, and scale these in. And we're going to go back to the Move tool now, and let's move these down. So as we move them down, we can kind of get a look at how big this gear is. That's a pretty big gear. We don't need that big. While we're there, let's scale these. I forgot, we can't scale when we're in that. So we're going to go from polygon into the vertices. So let's hit Control on the keyboard and select Vertex. And that's going to change our selection from those polys to the vertexes that were touching that face. So now while we're in Vertex, we will be able to hit the X and scale these in. Alright, now that I got that, I know that I want to move these back up. Nice. Now I'm going to hit Control and go back to Polygon. Okay, and yeah, okay, that I can see why they didn't work, because all of these faces are touching those verts, so we'll just reselect them. Okay, so I'm going to go up here to Scale, and I want to turn these faces so they're 40 to 45 degrees, like a picture frame. So if I hit the Rotate tool, I've got them both selected. You'll see if I rotate them, I get really weird results going on. That's because they're being rotated based on the view. and that's controlled by this little box here next to it. If I go all the way down here to local, if I go to local, it's going to pivot both of these faces on their own little centers. So I'm going to pivot these, and you'll see now they're rotating correctly. So I'm going to rotate them out like that. Okay, now one more extrusion. Well, those are still selected. That's way too long. I'm going to bring those in. Yeah, about right there. I'm going to hit check. We're still on local. We still have the new faces selected. And now we're going to rotate those flush with the ground. And I'm going to go back to vertex. So I'm going to hit control vertex. Go back to the scale tool. Let's use the X until the verts are underneath here. We've got a nice straight line up. Now we had some bad results over here, so I'm going to just select these two verts that didn't behave and slide these on down. Here's a good time for a back view. We're going to go V key, and back view, which, believe it or not, is the correct view. And if you notice, these anti-aliased lines, they'll really help you to get things to be lined up vertically underneath one another. There is another trick. I'm box selecting so that if I don't have anything selected and I just click on one, I'm selecting just that one. But if I box select, I'll select them both. I could lift this up and try to even it out by eye, but I can box select all of these, and while I'm at it, I'll select these over here too. Use this scale tool. Let's just roll that in the Y, and what that does is scales everything nice and flat together. Okay, so we need to have a right and a left gear, and so far I just have a single gear. So I am going to go to Edge, the Edge tool, or Edge selection, and I'm going to draw a marquee across all of these edges, and it'll select just the edges that it came in contact with. Now, not far from the Extrude tab, we're going to have the Connect button. By default, this is going to be a single connection directly in the middle of all these lines. It'll connect all the way around. Excuse me. So, just clicking that button gives me a connection all the way around. That's good. So I'm going to select all of the faces on this side. And I'm going to go back over to my tools. I'm going to have to scroll down this time until we're in the Edit Geometry tab. I'm going to click Detach. So while we're here, let's name it. This is going to be the left gear. Remember, we need that ~cs _ prefix. And this is going to be our left gear, so we're just going to name it LG. Required name, by the way. That needs to be the name of this for sure. That leaves the need to, let's go to editable pile here, we're going to unselect everything. Select this side here, and we need to name ~cs _, that is our right gear. Okay, so we got a left gear, we got a right gear. Moving right along. I'll tell you what, I really am not digging the length of this plane, but it's easily fixed. Let's go and create some wheels. I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to go to cylinder this time. And I never have any luck creating in this direction, but what do you know, today it's going to. Lucky me. So I'm going to create a wheel. Doesn't really important about the size right now. You can see by default this is going to give us 5 edge segments. Since this is a simple tutorial, I'm not going to shape this to look round or anything, so right over here where it says height segments, I'm just going to right click on these arrows, and that will zero those out, or single those out in this case. Okay, now I need to move this wheel to an acceptable location here. Now, a good way to do that, we need to go to the Move tool, obviously. And since we have this selected, we're going to hit Alt-X on the keyboard, and that makes this object see-through until the next time we hit Alt-X. So if I grab both of these handles on the Move tool at the same time, everything lights up yellow. I'm going to move this over until that centers up right in the center of this return on on the drogue here. So that looks good. So that's nice and centered in my opinion. So I'm going to hit the V key. We're going to go to a back view, and I'm going to move. Let's move this over to this side. Very nice. Oh, I'm going to hit P on the keyboard for perspective view, Alt middle mouse wheel, and I'm going to check out the size of that wheel, and that's humongous. So I'm going to move to, well, you know what, I haven't turned this to an editable poly, so let's go to the Modify tab. We're going to go here to Radius, and you can see that scales from its center, so that'll give us a basic wheel. So while we're here, let's name that tilde CS underscore, another required name here. This is our RW, our right wheel, white wheel. I'm Elmer Fudd now. Okay, so same trick applies for mirroring across that x-axis, just in the way we want to. I'm going to go to the Hierarchy tab. I'm going to go down and highlight Use Working Pivot. Go up here to the Mirror tool, which is up at the top, and move this dialog out of the way, and you can see, oops, that has made a copy. I'm going to OK that copy. It's placed it right where we want it. Deselect the Use Working Pivot, and just take out those concatenated 001s. Take out the R, and make that left wheel. Okay, so we're getting pretty close here to something that's workable. We got a bunch of named parts. So let's take one of these wheels, and since we don't need to mirror it, we just need to move a wheel for the back. I'm going to hold Shift on the keyboard, and then Y, I'll slide out a copy. While we're here, let's name it, and take off those zeros, take off the L. This is going to be known as the steering wheel, the S wheel, SW. Click OK. Quick way to get that to the center of the fuselage is right-clicking on the X. Boom, it's centered under our fuselage. Go to a left orthographic, or I can click this little icon at the top. Click left, and then U. I'm in orthographic, and I want to put this underneath my rudder. And going back to the edit, I can change the radius. Make this more appropriate for a tail dragger. Simple little tail dragger. Move that up till I'm happy. Okay, back to the P key to get perspective back. Oh, well, we can see now that that didn't really center it. And the reason why is because this axis of this wheel is moved off to this end, which is what, you know, the 2D circle that was created first before we created the height, and that's where the pivot was placed. So the way to correct that is we're going to go to the Hierarchy tab, and in this tab is where we always deal with pivots, and just mainly dealing with pivots in this tab here. So I'm going to use this button here this time. It's called Effect Pivot Only. Okay, and you'll see these alignment buttons open up. If I just click Center to Object, that's going to center that object right up, or center that pivot right up. Alright, perfect. Okay, I'll tell you what, while we're here, let's make sure all our pivots are correct. Now this, you can see this icon has changed now. This is a more three-dimensional looking gizmo. That's really just telling us where the pivot is. And what we're looking for is for the green arrow, or the y-axis, to move down our fuselage, and we're looking for the red to move off to the right, with the blue, or the z-axis, to move straight up. That's a correct axis, and that's going to be true for almost every part. So while we're here, I'm going to center this one up too. That's going to center that pivot on that fuselage object. And let's just keep moving around, selecting an object, centering it up. Later we're going to affect these pivots on these ailerons, all that good stuff, but for now I'm just going to center all pivots up. And this is the long way. Another way is to just go ahead and select the whole thing. And you can get a view of all the pivots all at once, and you can just click center. It's going to center all of those pivots to their respective parts. Now, If you look around, I can see some red arrows that aren't behaving correctly. They're pointed the wrong way. They're doing all bad stuff. We want all these to be aligned correctly. There's a quick way to do that too. Well, we've got everything selected here. We're going to click the Transform tab, and everything jumps into its behavior. It doesn't change its position in the object. It's still centered in the object. It just aligns it to the world again. So with that done, that's good. I can deselect that. Now if I select this wheel again, when I've got the Move tool, you can see that it pivots in its center. If I right click on this X again, I'll get a wheel that's centered up on the fuselage. Alright, so now I need to make the landing gear that goes from this wheel, and that should be all of the, really all of the visible necessary parts for this model. So let's just make a simple cylinder object, and I'm going to create that from overhead. Pull out something fairly thin, pull it straight up. This doesn't need to be a ton of sides. I can go back down to 8 sides will work for this. Okay, neat little thing we can do here is you can see where this little fuzzy, hard to see icon is that keeps shrinking as I zoom in. You can see that's at the bottom of our cylinder. That's its pivot point. So a quick way to do this here is right next to that mirror tool we've been using. Right directly next to it is the Quick Align tool. If you don't see this little lightning bolt, you may see this icon. You're just going to want to long press on this icon, and you go down to select the lightning bolt one. That's our Quick Align. You'll also see that anything that has a little arrow here is going to be, you can long press and you'll get more selections. Okay, so I'm going to Quick Align. I'm going to align this gear to this wheel. So with it selected and the Quick Align tool selected, just click on our wheel, and now that's centered on the wheel. Okay. Now I can quickly move on to the Rotate tool to rotate that gear down to touch my fuselage. And we can see if we select a fuselage and use our Alt-X invisible trick, I can see what's going on with my cylinder. I'm going to go back to the Edit tab and I'm going to change its height. Bring that height down to here. Now the big problem is I don't want the gear to pivot from there. I want that gear to pivot from the top. So a simple way to do that is first I'm going to select the gear here, and I'm going to right click. I'm going to go up here to hide unselected. Now all the parts but this gear is selected right now. So, or unselected right now. So if I hit hide unselected, everything's going to go bye-bye. So everything but my landing gear anyways. So here we are. I'm going to go back to my hierarchy tab. I'm going to highlight that pivot, and I'd really like to use Quick Align and align it to up here, but that's really not possible. So what can I do? Let's go back to the Modify tab. Let's change this to a poly, and let's go back over here, pivot, align, still nothing. Okay, so man, that's none of that Quick Align stuff's going to work for my pivot on this. So what we want to do is go to left and hit U on the keyboard, get an orthographic view. I'm going to select Effect Pivot Only. And you can see that my pivot is aligned. It'd be great if I could just slide that up, but my gizmo here, I'd have to do this in a really awkward way. So a good way to do that is, like before, I'm going to go up here and I'm going to select Local. And you'll see that pivots that right straight down. And now I can just slide this up to the top. It'd be a more appropriate place for this to pivot from when we're in RealFlight. So I'm going to deselect that, and while we're here, let's name this tilde CS underscore, and this is going to be our steering gear, or SG. Okay, we're going to right click, and we're going to unhide all. So we got all our parts unhidden. You can select that fuse and Alt X and bring its color back. Basically, we got a little roller here. We got a model here that is basically covered. Now, if you're going to add a power plant to this, if this isn't going to be a glider, which most planes aren't, but some are done that, in other ways, we're going to need to tell RealFlight where are the engines going to be located, or where the prop will be located, especially. So we need an engine component. So we're going to go back here to the Create tab, under the Geometry tab, and we're going to use Plane. Drag this out. If I hold Control on the keyboard, that'll keep it into a square. So I'm going to drag this up. Now you see all these divisions here. I don't need those divisions. So over here it says length segments, width segments. I'm going to right click on these arrows and those will disappear. Now this needs to go in place of the propeller. The propeller's made in RealFlight. So I'm going to rotate this in the X up 90 degrees. Okay, and let's quick align that to the fuselage. And back to the Move tool, and let's change this back to view, the coordinates. Change that back to view. Let's slide this out to where we think that propeller should go. Let's make this a little bit high on the nose. Okay. Now the required name for this part is tilde CS underscore engine. Just for good measure, let's call it engine 1. Okay, so now there's another part. I don't really think it's required. It's the spinner. So I think we can make that part really quick. Why not? So let's just make it from this part here. Make this an editable poly. We'll take, let's just make it a poly. Hold Shift on the keyboard, hold the Y tab, pull this out, or the Y key, sorry, pull that out. And let's rename this part right now to tilde CS underscore spinner. Very good. We don't want our spinner to be that huge, so let's reduce its size dramatically. Make this a funky square spinner because we're not really caring about looks here. Get this a lot closer to the fuselage. Let's get it down to the top. Very good. I am going to select the engine and hide it. Okay, so now with our spinner selected, I'm going to select this poly and I'm going to extrude that right up. Okay, I've got this face selected, but I'd rather have the verts, so I'm going to use my little Control Select trick. Now I've got just those 4 verts selected. I'm going to go down to this new tool in the Edit Geometry tab, and I'm going to select Collapse. That's going to turn all 4 of those into one single point. Now this is more appropriate for a spinner. We'll definitely see it spinning. So I'm going to unhide all when we get that engine back. Now this plane, this engine part we have here, marks the very back of our propeller. So wherever you want the back of your propeller to be, that's where this should be placed appropriately. Definitely don't want it that far back. Okay, our spinner, as long as it's centered down the center, you can check for its spin and the Y. That should work. Okay, now a few things. These pivots aren't going to be right because I created them laying down and stood it up, and now that means the pivot's going to be 90 degrees off. So let's select both these parts here. We're going to go back to the Hierarchy tab. We're going to affect the pivot only and transform these parts. Okay. So now we got all that lined up. That's nice. So all the pivots are done. Let's line up the pivots for our parts here. So I'm going to go to the top view, the V key, top view. And on this aileron, this is a very simple aileron here. It's nothing special, so I'm just going to move its pivot right up to the hinge line here. And if you get this point right in here where everything converges and the very tip of the arrow lined up, you're usually pretty good. And do the same thing, select the other one, move it up, move back, let's move that one up, select this one, move it up. Very good. Alright, I'm going to go to the left view. The L on the keyboard, by the way, will get you the left view, but there's not a shortcut for every view. So now I want to select this rudder. Now the rudder is treated specially. We want to run that x-axis straight up the center. So we're going to want to use the rotate tool here, and with the snaps turned on, we're going to rotate this up 90 degrees. So now we have that same x-axis or red axis running through the rudder. Now if we go back to perspective mode, if you like to play around a little bit, we need to get out of effect pivot only. And now we can see that we got this pivoting. And we're banging into the elevator, so let's modify that. We'll select both elevator, come back to the modify tab, get an edit poly modifier on both of those. Let's go to edge. I'm going to select this edge. Sometimes it can be difficult to select. Just zoom in there. Roll in with the mouse wheel and you'll get it to work. So the scale 2 would be the right tool to go with. So, and it doesn't work with the edge either. So Control and click on the vertex icon. Use the scale tool. Scale on the X, and we're gonna look at what deselected for some reason. Okay, so let's select these again. Just the X tool. And just the X handle, but this isn't working today. Okay. All right. We'll go a different route. We're gonna move these over, and we'll see what happens here. We're moving them in the X. So let's slide them over 1.719. See if I get that to work somehow. 1.719. Something close. 1.8. I lost it. Control Z, get that back. Let's get it. I want to get it fairly close at least. Close enough. Alright, now we're going to want to collapse that back down. Select that rudder. Go back to the rotate tool. Alright, now we're going to get some degrees of rotation there without bumping into the other thing. You can test it out here again. Very good. Now don't worry about how it's colliding with the wing. You know, that's just not what we're worried about yet. We want to just get this thing working. Okay, so believe it or not, these are all of our parts. The last thing we need to do is to link these parts together. And the idea there is that we'll have a root or main parent, a great grandparent of all the other. And that's the way you want to think of it. Every link creates a child and parent relationship. So the fuselage is our main object. So let's think of our secondary objects, and we want to link those or make them the child of the fuselage. So the way to do that is right up here, the very first icon is this select and link. You're going to click on that, and believe it or not, it's easy as dragging and dropping. So let's just start with the wings. I want to make the wing. You start with the child. The wing is going to be the child of the fuselage. So I'll click on the wing and drag it to what I want to be the parent. So for this wing, I would like the fuselage to be a parent. For the horizontal stabilizer, I want the fuselage to be the parent. Same thing for the other side, same thing for the vertical. We also want the engine and spinner to be linked. We want both gear to be linked, or all three gear, let's say. Go back here, select this gear, link that. Okay, so now those are all the main, the secondary parts linked up to our main object, the fuselage. So now we're going to link up all the other objects to their parent. So we're going to make the aileron a child of its wing, and this aileron a child of its wing, and that just goes on and on. Just link these up, drag, drop, zoom in here. I want to make the wheel a child of this landing gear. I want to make this wheel a child of this landing gear, this wheel a child of this landing gear. Very good. So now everything should be linked. So one way to check that is we're going to come up here and we're going to go to the schematic view. And this is basically showing us if everything is linked and what their relationship is. We can see the fuselage here is laid out as the main dude. The wings are parented to that. Everything in this top row here is considered a secondary object linked up, and then everything else below is linked to those objects. You'd see free objects floating over here if they weren't parented. So we know we're completely parented. We've set our pivots. We've got everything named. We have an entire model. Now what we want to do is center and scale this model up. So we're going to bring back that grid and consider this line here what we want to line up at the balance point of this wing, or the CG. So I'm going to go to the left view. I'm going to grab all my parts. We still have that line here, this vertical line. And we're going to move all these parts backwards, and I'm judging right here on the wing where I want this line to break. This may vary from modeler to modeler, but I like to put this line here on the thrust line, so I usually just put that spinner right on it. And you can see if we go back to perspective view that model is pretty much drawn towards the back here. Looks like it's a little long to me. So while I've got all of these parts selected, these parts here selected, I am going to put an edit poly modifier on those. I'm going to grab my vertices. I'm going to grab every vertex back here. See, all of those are selected. I'm just going to drag everything forward. And that'll leave all this front parts, all the front parts up here will be left alone. And I'll be able to move those parts. That looks good. Remember, let's collapse that. Yes. Okay, so the other thing to remember too is we don't, when we're modeling, we're not putting the wheels on the ground. We're thinking of the thrust line of the plane. RealFlight will place your model based on your wheel objects that are named correctly. So if this was a tricycle aircraft, it would know how to place it based on where the wheels are positioned, as long as they're named correctly. So everything here, everything is good to go into RealFlight, except for one thing. We need to have a color scheme of some sort, and that's done with a TGA. So you're going to need to open up an image editor. I use Photoshop. GIMP is free, but I've used Photoshop for years. So what I'm going to do here is why would I say open? I'm going to select new, and I'll go to custom size here in pixels. Now your color scheme has to be in multiples of 256, only doubled. So you can do 256, 512, 1024, 2060, 2048, sorry, and 4096. 4096 would be the largest. But just because we want to get this model out, just because we want to get, we need to have some image associated with it, or the Kex exporter won't let it out, we're just going to do a 256 size image. So in the width and the height, we'll do 256, keep the resolution at 300 pixels an inch, and OK. And now we just select any color. I don't care, this red will work. Use the bucket, and we're going to fill it. So now I'm going to save as, select my format here. I want it to be a targa, and I will call this box Trainer CS. And I'm just going to drop that right there on the desktop. That's done. I'm going to move back into 3ds Max now. Oh, sorry, I need to save that. We don't have any alpha information here. That would be the extra 8 bits that would make it 32. All we need is 24 for this. And the compress RLE is possible in RealFlight, so I always select that. That'll make this quite a tiny image. So now that that's truly saved on the desktop, I can hit close here. I'm going to select all of my parts, open up this icon here. Now you may get a different editor than I, and this is the editor I use. You may get this editor. This is the Slate editor, or the full-size, more complex editor. Really not necessary for our needs. So we want that top icon here under the long press. Okay, so we need to make a material. These are materials. Within one of these materials we can plug in our TJ that we just made. We can just drag this on here. We can create color within 3ds Max, but it is required that we have an external TGA file associated. So I'm going to select on any one of these, and I'm going to select on the first one here. I'm going to go all the way down here to blend basic parameters, and where it says diffuse next to this box here we have this little tiny square box, and a little none pop-up comes up, tooltip comes up. You select that. We're going to go to bitmap. Of course it's not going to be just a bitmap, it's going to be any type of image, so we're going to select that, click OK, and we will browse to the desktop, and there's my box trainer CS TGA. So now you can see the sphere has changed red, and now it's reflecting the color that I made. It's what that TGA looks like. So just out of confusion's sake, we're going to want to we're in kind of the tools for this particular image. We hit this little go to parent button. We're going to go back into what we've seen before. Now this little specular and highlights, you may want to do that if you want to make it a little shiny. So it's a little interesting. You can see this curve here is going to show how shiny it is. The taller that is, the shinier, the more specular it is, but it'll be frosty. And you can see the results up here on the material. Get kind of a frosty, whitish reflection. As we raise our glossiness level, you can see we get a sharp peak, and you can see that reflection focuses into a dot. That's more shiny. So the higher numbers, pump these way up, and you're going to get a very glossy finish. For this, we're going to drag this back down into something reasonable, 140, something like that. Take some of the shine down, something like that, something like Monaco. It's just rough, it doesn't really matter. So now that we've done that, we've got everything here selected. Selected every part on our model. All it's left to do is to drag and to drop that sphere onto this, and it says assign to selection. Okay. Now it's gray, and that's red. Why did that happen? Well, we don't have this material just shown in the viewport. It's on there, but it's just not in the viewport. So this little button here says show standard map in viewport. Click that. There you go. Got an all red model. So we can close the material editor, and we have now made a complete model that will export into, or import into RealFlight. So we're going to call this the box trainer. So I'm going to select this. I'm going to do a export, and the export dialog comes up. I want to change the type to Kex, and I want to go to my desktop, and I'm going to call this my box trainer, and I'll save that to the desktop. Okay, so pretty sure that's complete. So I'm going to minimize Max and start up RealFlight. Now we're going to use a model to use its physics. We get a chance to select an existing model. You'll see that your model, if named correctly and everything's done correctly, that it'll fly using the physics of that selected model. So this plane will fly as soon as you get it to load. So we'll go through the import process for a KEX, and then we should be able to do it. Alright, so I'm going to go to Simulation, Import, and KEX. I'm going to browse to my desktop, select that KEX, and click Next. Good sign here that it's already recognized as an airplane. That means that I've done my job of naming my parts correctly, and RealFlight is now recognizing this as an airplane. Now this drop down is a list of all the aircraft that you have, including custom aircraft. You can use anybody's physics to get this to fly, but I'll just be using the PT-40. This is a trainer, so we'll get the PT-40's physics. We'll go down and select that from the list, and select Finish. Down at the bottom it says KEX box trainer import successful. So now it's going to be in our aircraft list. So we go to Aircraft, select Aircraft. We need to go into the Custom Aircraft. Slide down until we see Box Trainer. Now we got a little tiny CS, so as soon as we click that, that's probably going to pop right up. It doesn't take very long to create the required DDS file. There we go. Got a shiny model, and it's got a tiny little prop. And there's all kinds of little weird issues, but it's a plane. It's a tiny little prop. And it's probably because I said we were going to scale the model and I never scaled it. So here we are, sitting on the runway. Let's bring this plane over to us. Whoa! Alright. Now if I move my ailerons, I've got aileron movement. And that's because I'm using those physics. Oh man, what has happened to the wheel? The wheel has jumped way up in the air. The rear wheel here has jumped up. It's doing some crazy stuff. I don't have my pivot right for the rear landing gear. I got some stuff wrong. So I got some things wrong, but it's rolling around because it's flying from the physics of the PT-40. There we go. So there we go. We got a model that's flying. Got some things that are wrong with it, but we'll correct that. Alright, so let's just tough landing. It's gonna land. It's gonna crash. Oh no! All right, let's not worry about that. Let's go in here and we're gonna go to edit this. What I'd like to do is find out what is the graphical width. Or no, sorry, the physics width. And that says we're at 4'.96". My model, the graphical width, is 13 feet wide. So we're going to go and change the wingspan back down to 5 feet to fit this, and we should see a little better results. We also should see a fix for the. Let's resize this window here. It's tiny. Okay, now I'm getting different results in here than I did in there, and that's got to be from the suspension or something like that. But the point really is to get everything in here and get it all working. See, the smoothing groups aren't working. Some of this stuff just looks crazy. So we're going to try to address some of those issues. So let's just go ahead and close that out, and we'll bring back 3ds Max. Now what did we do wrong here? If we go to the hammer, the last tool here, that'd be the Utilities tab, we can click on Measure, and Measure is going to open up these different pieces of information here. And with everything selected, I go to the Scale tool and I make sure that I'm in View. I'm going to scale from the center of the gizmo, which means every part of this plane is going to scale. And I'm going to pay attention to this X dimension, but right now it says 157.413. That's not jiving, so I'm going to go to Customize, Unit Setup. I'm going to change this to US Standard Feet with Fractional Inches. Okay. Okay, now we're going to scale this down. We're going to look at that number over there at 10 feet, 9 feet, 7 feet, 6. We're getting closer to that 5 feet that we're looking for. It's not imperative that it's perfect. We'll just get close. It popped into the 4s. Can I get it? Can I get it? 5 foot and 5/30 seconds. That'll do. We'll zoom back in. We'll probably change some position stuff. That's definitely going to happen when you scale. So now let's just move back into the move tool. Let's go to the V key and top view and zoom in here a little bit. Let's just move that along so that this black line here is lined up with about 1/4 the way back from the leading edge on landing or on the wing. Now we'll hit L on the keyboard and smooth that back down into the thrust line. Now I didn't see the spinner moving and I'm not really sure why that is. Ah, I do know why that is. Okay, let's hit P, perspective. Let me show you what's going on here. I did have a propeller. That means that I named it correctly with this engine 1, which is pretty much the default for all KE aircraft. They're going to have engine 1 as the default name. But the names for the spinner and the engine need to match, and they don't. If I'm going to have a 1 at the end of engine, I need a 1 at the end of spinner. So I'm going to correct that. We're going to call that spinner 1. Another thing I need to do here is I'm going to come in here and check my pivots, and lo and behold, look what happened. This pivot for this wheel is way away. Let's see if that really is true. It is true. Alright, well, I'm going to center that back up. That should solve some problems for the wheel. And looky there. Now I remember what happened. When I moved everything in with the when I moved everything in using the verts to make this plane shorter, I left all the pivots behind. Not very smart of me. So let's select just that landing gear by hiding unselected. I'm going to move that back till it's touching the very top. That's good, and that means I moved my rudder and my elevators the same way. So that's going to be simple. So you can leave that selected, right click, unhide all, V key, top view. We're going to select this guy here. I'm going to move that back to where it needs to be. I'm going to do the same thing here. Just eyeball it, doesn't really matter. Go to the L, and let's select the rudder. That should be the last thing that needs to be done. That's still vertical, so we're good. Okay, so I believe I've addressed all of the issues. So let's get rid of that grid. So I think I've addressed all the issues. So now what I need to do is do a new export. Now one thing I did, big gigantic no-no, is I did this entire project and I never saved it. So let's hit save now. This will save this max file so that we can get back to it. We can edit it whenever we want to. It's obviously a good idea. So we'll just name it Box Trainer. Okay, so now we have a Box Trainer CSTGA, a Box Trainer KEX, and I'm going to have a Box Trainer Max. So that's all saved up. Now let's do an export. Now I'm just going to go ahead and export over top of what we did. We didn't make any changes to the physics in any way. So we're just going to export this and just do an overwrite. Yes, I want to replace it for sure. Minimize. Now you're not going to be able to do this import process while you still have that same model selected, so we're going to just need to change to any old aircraft. So let's change back to this little guy. Now we'll come back into the import. Import a KEX, browse, want the Box Trainer again. Select next. Yes, it's still an airplane. Now we're going to go down to that PT40 again because we still want the physics from that one. We're not going to select the old one, another Box Trainer. We're going to do the same exact process this time. It's going to see that we're going to be overwriting some files. Totally expected. It's exactly what we want to do. Okay, so now let's go back and just select Box Trainer. Now you can just grab it from the quick menu. It's going to be the same result. Alright, now we have a smaller plane. Looks like the spinner's moving. Let's bring this in for a look-see. I'm getting some steering issues. It doesn't want to steer to me. The gear are bouncing. They're bouncing around because I didn't do a complex setup on that. You know, I try to keep this simple, so don't expect this to look pretty. Look at me, I can't even drive on the ground. Alright, so let's fly it. And now this is flying like the PT-40 would fly, same speed, same everything, because what's in the editor is what's flying. The physics that you set up in the editor is what's flying. This is merely what you look at. Okay, so we finish this tutorial with a fair landing, but it's really nose heavy. It's going really fast. Come on, let's just do a sloppy landing then. Okay. That's the process. That should be everything you need to know to get a basic model in RealFlight and working. So I hope I covered everything. If you have any questions, go ahead and just add them. And good luck.